Hello everyone, welcome back. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. I used to think emotional distance was something you could fix with effort, patience, trying harder, being more present, and doing more of the things that used to work. I was wrong. My name is Colin, and I was 34 when everything fell apart. Time feels different now, measured differently. So maybe age doesn't matter the way it used to. My wife, Vanessa, and I had been married for 7 years when I realized our marriage had quietly died without either of us officially acknowledging it. We met when I was in my early 30s and she was in her late 20s. I ran a small construction business, focusing more on residential renovations, kitchen remodels, bathroom updates, and other related kinds of work. It provides a steady income with a reliable crew of guys who'd been with me for years. Vanessa worked in pharmaceutical sales and made decent money. She traveled occasionally for conferences and had that polished professional appearance. Our early relationship was good. We'd meet for lunch when we can. I'd pick her up after work, and we'd try new restaurants or just walk around the city when we feel like it. We got married after dating for 4 years. We agreed that it would be a simple ceremony, with a honeymoon in Mexico. When we came back, we put a down payment on a small house in a decent neighborhood. The first few years of marriage were what I'd expected marriage to be. Not perfect because no relationship is, but we were solid and connected. We talked about our days, made plans together, had inside jokes, and shared routines. But somewhere around our 5th year, things changed. We had no big fight or obvious turning point. It was just gradual, like the temperature in a room dropping so slowly you don't notice until you're shivering. Vanessa started coming home later from work. Not because she was working longer hours, but because she'd stop at other places first. She would give excuses, and sometimes claim to be running random errands that took longer than they needed to. She'd walk in looking tired and distant. We no longer eat dinner together because she'd go to her laptop or her phone for the rest of the evening. I tried to reconnect, suggested date nights, planned weekend trips, bought tickets to shows I thought she'd enjoy. She'd agree half-heartedly. Then on the day of whatever I'd planned, she'd be tired or have a headache or need to catch up on work. She always has 1 or 2 excuses up her sleeve. Our physical relationship deteriorated in parallel. What had once been frequent and natural became rare and mechanical. I'd try to initiate, and she'd redirect or deflect. Too tired. Not feeling well. Maybe tomorrow, but tomorrow never came. By year 7, we were living like roommates. Polite, distant roommates who happened to share a house and a last name. Our home felt like a museum. Everything is organized and in its place, but lifeless. We'd move through the same spaces at different times, leaving no trace of actually living there. Even when I made up my mind that I was done trying, I kept trying. Because that's what you do in a marriage, right? You work at it. You don't give up when things get hard. But nothing I tried made a difference. Every attempt at connection was met with indifference or mild annoyance. Then, one evening, everything crystallized. I'd gotten home from a job site around 6. Vanessa's car was already in the driveway, which was unusual for a weekday. I came in through the garage, set my work bag down, and heard her voice from upstairs. She was on the phone in our bedroom. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, just walked toward the kitchen to get water, and her voice carried down the stairs. She was talking to someone, I assumed her best friend, based on the casual tone, venting about something. I stopped in the hallway, not because I meant to listen, but because I heard my name. She was talking about me. She complained about the things I am not doing right and how she is tired of pretending she is fine. Then she said, I don't love him anymore. Honestly, if he just vanished before my birthday, that'd be the best gift. She laughed after saying it, like it was a joke. But the tone was too honest to be anything but the truth. I couldn't believe my ears as I was shocked. I took some time processing what I'd heard. My wife, the woman I'd been trying desperately to reconnect with for years, didn't love me anymore. Wanted me gone. Would consider my disappearance a gift. I backed up quietly and left through the garage before she knew I'd been home. I drove around for an hour, just thinking, trying to make sense of feelings I didn't quite know how to name. Hearing her say she didn't love me shattered my heart. Maybe she hadn't for a while, which meant all my efforts to save our marriage had been futile because you can't make someone love you. Can't convince them to want you around. I'd been trying to fix something that she didn't want fixed. When I finally came home that night around 9, Vanessa was in the living room on her laptop. She barely looked up when I walked in. She asked vaguely if I'd eaten. I said yes, then went to the guest room where I'd been sleeping for the past few months. Her birthday was 3 months away. Over the next few days, I tried to decide what to do with the information. Part of me wanted to confront her. Ask her directly if she meant what she'd said. Try one more time to salvage something. But I already knew how that would go. She'd either deny it, call it a joke taken out of context, or she'd admit it. And we'd have a painful conversation that ended with the marriage over anyway. And honestly, I was tired. So tired of trying. Of being the only person invested in keeping us together. I started thinking about her actual words. About vanishing. What would that even look like? Just leaving? Disappearing from her life like she'd wished? The idea took root. I didn't confront her as the days passed. I quietly withdrew further. Stopped suggesting activities. Stopped trying to start conversations. Just existed in parallel to her, the way she seemed to prefer. After a week of watching her move through the house like I wasn't there and living like ghosts haunting the same space, I made my decision. I'd give her what she wanted. Ite banish. Not forever, necessarily, but long enough to see what happened. Long enough for her to experience what she'd said she wanted. I ran a small construction business with about 8 employees. We had projects lined up for the next several months. But I was the owner. I could make changes. I started adjusting things carefully. Talked to my foreman, Danny, who'd been with me since I started the company. Told him I was thinking about taking an extended time off. I needed him to oversee operations for a while. Danny was surprised but agreed. We'd worked together long enough that he knew how to handle most situations. I started ending contracts that needed my presence, but extended beyond 3 months. I called clients, explained I was restructuring the business timeline, and helped them find other contractors if they needed immediate work. For projects we'd already committed to, I made sure Danny had everything he needed to finish them. Then I started handling finances. Vanessa and I had a joint checking account for household expenses. We each also had personal accounts from before we were married. I'd always contributed more to the joint account since I made slightly more. Now I started transferring small amounts from the joint to the personal. Not huge sums that would be noticed immediately. Just gradually shifting my money back under my exclusive control. I canceled upcoming commitments and arranged my affairs quietly. Researched where I might go. How long will I stay? What I'd need to survive comfortably for a month, maybe longer. This preparation took about 2 months. I was methodically untangling myself from our shared life while appearing to maintain normalcy. At home, things stayed the same. Or maybe got worse. I'd stopped trying to engage with Vanessa at all, and she didn't seem to notice or care. I'm not sure she registered that anything had changed with me, or if she did, she was relieved by the decreased pressure to interact. 2 nights before her birthday, I left for work with more than just my usual work bag. I'd packed a larger bag with clothes, toiletries, my laptop, and important documents. Everything I'd need for an extended absence. I left my phone in our mailbox. Still on. Still receiving notifications. Just sitting there, waiting to be found. I'd already deleted my social media accounts days earlier. Wiped my location history. Left no digital trail of where I was going. I drove away from our house at 6 in the morning, knowing I wouldn't be coming back for a while. I'd made arrangements to stay in a coastal town about 6 hours away. A small community on the Oregon coast. Tourist destination in summer, but quiet in the shoulder seasons. I'd rented a small furnished apartment month to month through a property management company. Paid 3 months up front. Gave a fake name for the rental and paid in cash. The drive took most of the day. I stopped for breakfast, then lunch, and then arrived at the apartment around 3 in the afternoon. It was simple but clean. One bedroom, small kitchen, living area with a view of the ocean. Exactly what I needed. The plan was to spend a month there. See what happened. See how I felt away from the weight of a dead marriage. That first week was strange. I'd wake up in the small apartment and spend several minutes remembering where I was. Then I'd make coffee and sit on the small balcony watching the ocean. The sound of waves became the background noise of my life. Constant, soothing, hypnotic. I'd walk on the beach every morning. Long walks with no destination. Just moving, thinking, and breathing. I'd get groceries at the small local market. Cook simple meals. Read books I'd been meaning to read for years. In the evenings, I'd sit on the beach watching the sunset. Sometimes other people were there, tourists, locals, other solitary figures. But mostly I was alone. And it was peaceful. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe fully. Like there was space around me that wasn't filled with tension and unspoken disappointment. I had no idea what was happening back home. What Vanessa had done when she realized I was gone. If she'd found the phone in the mailbox. If she was worried or relieved or indifferent. I didn't let myself think about it too much. That was the point of leaving. To step away from the constant mental loop of trying to fix something unfixable. The days blurred together in the best way. Walking, reading, cooking, watching the ocean. Simple routines with no pressure or expectation. I started talking to locals. The woman who ran the coffee shop I went to every morning. The guy at the tackle shop gave me tips on where to fish, even though I'd never fished before. Started actually fishing. Bought cheap equipment and spent hours on jetties or rocks, just casting and reeling. I didn't catch much, but it didn't matter. I met a few other people who seemed to be escaping something, too. I never asked what they were running from, and they never asked me why I was there, either. By the end of the first month, I realized something significant. I didn't want to go back. Not to the house, not to Vanessa, and not to the life I'd been living. This quiet, simple existence was what I wanted. This was what peace felt like after years of slowly drowning. But I had responsibilities. A business. Assets. A marriage that needed to be officially ended. I couldn't just disappear forever without handling things properly. So I made a decision. This would be my life going forward. But first, I needed to close the chapter on what came before. I contacted a divorce attorney with good reviews. Set up an initial consultation over the phone. Explained my situation. I'd left my marriage, was living separately, and wanted to file for divorce. The attorney asked practical questions. How long married, any children, shared assets, and reasons for divorce. I kept it simple. I told the attorney that the reason for the divorce was due to irreconcilable differences and emotional abandonment. Marriage had been dead for years. The attorney said she could draw up papers and have them served to Vanessa at our home address. I authorized her to proceed. About a week later, the attorney called to confirm Vanessa had been served. Apparently, she'd been shocked, claimed she had no idea where I was, and demanded to know how to contact me. But the attorney had provided no information beyond the legal documents. A few days after that, I drove back to Portland. Not to stay, just to handle necessary business. I arrived in the evening, went directly to our house. Vanessa's car was in the driveway. I let myself in through the front door. She was in the living room, and when she saw me, her face went through several expressions. She claimed she'd been looking everywhere for me, that she'd been so worried, that she'd filed a missing person report. She looked at me like I was supposed to feel guilty for disappearing and making her worry. I stayed calm, letting her finish her performance. Then I said simply, "I heard what you said, about wishing I'd vanish before your birthday." Her face went pale. "I gave you what you wanted," I continued. "You said you didn't love me anymore, that my disappearance would be the best gift. So I disappeared." She tried to speak, but I held up my hand. "You don't need to explain or defend it. You told the truth. You wanted me gone. I'm granting that wish. The divorce papers are just making it official." Vanessa tried to recover, said I'd misunderstood, that she was just venting to a friend, that she didn't mean it seriously. I shook my head. "You meant it. And honestly, I'm grateful you said it where I could hear, because it gave me clarity I'd been lacking. She changed tactics, tried to talk me out of the divorce, said we could work on things, that she had thought about everything while I was away. I stopped her again. Save it. You've been emotionally checked out of this marriage for years. I was the only one trying, and you resented even that. Now you're free. You can do whatever, or be with whoever you want without sneaking around. Her eyes widened slightly at that last part. I continued. Yeah, I figured that out too. I'm not an idiot. The late nights, the distance, the lack of interest in me. You've probably been cheating for a while. I don't even need to know details. Doesn't matter anymore. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I looked around the living room. I'm taking my things. The stuff that's clearly mine, tools, clothes, personal items. You can have the house, the furniture, most everything else. My lawyer will work out the details. I went upstairs and started packing. Filled several boxes with clothes, some books, and a few personal items with sentimental value. Vanessa followed me around, alternating between pleading and accusing. Said I was giving up too easily, that I was running away. I ignored most of it, just kept packing my things. When I'd loaded everything into my truck, I stood in the doorway one last time. I found something better, I told her. Found myself again. Found peace. You did me a favor, actually. Helped me realize I was wasting energy trying to save something you'd already abandoned. Then I left. Over the next month, I handled the business side of things. Met with Danny, told him I was selling the company. Gave him the first right of refusal since he'd been there from the beginning. We negotiated a fair price. He brought in a partner to help with financing. A couple of months after, the sale was complete. I had enough money to live comfortably for years if I were careful. Enough to start over completely in Cannon Beach. I let the attorney handle all divorce negotiations. Told her I was willing to be generous with asset division. I didn't want to drag things out fighting over furniture and bank accounts. Vanessa's attorney tried to claim she deserved more, claimed emotional distress for my disappearance, said I'd abandoned marital responsibilities. My attorney shut that down quickly. I'd left because the marriage was over. Had evidence of Vanessa's emotional abandonment over the years. Was being more than fair in the proposed settlement. The divorce was finalized 7 months after I'd overheard that phone conversation. 6 months after I'd vanished. We split most assets 50-50. She kept the house. I kept the proceeds from selling my business. We each walked away clean, legally untangled. I never saw Vanessa again after that night I came back for my things. Now I live in Cannon Beach full-time. Rented for a few months, then bought a small house a block from the ocean. I don't run a business anymore. Don't have employees or deadlines or the constant pressure to keep things moving. Instead, I work occasionally doing handyman jobs for locals. Cash work, no contracts, just helping people fix things that need fixing. On my free days, I spend my mornings walking on the beach. My afternoons are spent reading or fishing, or just existing without purpose. My life is simple in a way it never was before. Quiet. Calm. I date sometimes. Nothing serious yet. But I'm open to the possibility of finding someone who actually wants to be with me rather than someone who tolerates my presence while wishing I'd disappear. I think about Vanessa occasionally. Wonder if she ever understood why I left. If she felt relief when I was gone, like she'd wanted. If she found whatever she was looking for. But those thoughts are fleeting. She's not part of my life anymore. The door closed completely the day our divorce was finalized. People might judge my decision to just leave without warning. To disappear like I did. But I gave years of effort to a marriage where I was the only one trying. Years of being made to feel like my presence was a burden rather than a gift. When I heard her say she wished I'd vanish, something broke free in me. Permission to stop trying. Permission to want something better for myself. Disappearing wasn't running away. It was reclaiming parts of myself I'd lost while trying to be enough for someone who decided I'd never be enough. It was choosing my own peace over her comfort. And I'd make that choice again without hesitation. The ocean outside my window is gray and restless this morning. Storm coming in. I'll walk on the beach anyway, feel the wind and spray, remind myself that I'm alive and free and no longer trying to earn love from someone who didn't have it to give. Sometimes disappearing isn't about running away. It's about walking towards something better. And I finally found it.